I grew up in Devonport before being drafted to Melbourne in 1987. I played 258 games, including 2 grand finals, over 15 years. I was on top of the world, but I almost threw it all away. My name's Febey, and this is my story. I played national basketball or state basketball for Tassie, and football was only really a byproduct. It was a kick to kick at lunchtime. My dad had played the most games for Devonport at the time. He was a local footy legend, but I suppose started to play football in under 15s, under 17s, a bit of school footy. Played one game of seniors with Devonport, and I must have impressed them, but I got the 3 votes, and we'd beaten the top team at home. And then I went back to under 17s because I didn't want to miss out on under 17s. My brother had taken my position, kicked 6 goals in my spot, so I said I'm going back there. And I suppose having a twin, you're always competitive, so I mean that was always a driving influence. And then I suppose to play, no more than 30 games of footy and then get drafted to AFL was, just very surreal. 15 years of footy, and then to go into finish in 2002 and have we'd a footy trip to Bali and a bit of a send-off. And then I suppose the events of the Bali bombings was a big impact on my retirement from football. So I sort of figure I didn't really go through post-sport depression, as I suppose people talk about. I sort of went through more post-traumatic stress. Instead of catching a cab to the Sari Club, we walked. And that probably might have been the saviour in essence, that instead of being in the club, we were just walking in. Certainly the first bomb went off at Paddy's, and had no idea what was going on, and sort of threw us up against the walls of the building next to Sari Club. And then a bit of confusion, trying to find out where your mates were and saying, get to your feet, get to your feet. And I remember doing that and running sort of to the edge of the road, and then the big bomb goes off. Ears are blown without really knowing. The adrenaline's pumping through you. I wasn't really aware of any injuries or anything that had happened to you. I checked my hands, fingers, toes, everything to see everything was there. And they were, and then, unfortunately the first image I see of that whole night is looking down on the ground and a gentleman hanging his hand up saying, "Can you help me?" Now I looked down and, what I saw was just, really blew my mind in terms of he had no legs. His legs were completely gone. Scream out my mates' names and trying to find them, and before you know it, you're seeing, dead bodies, arms and limbs, and the smell of burning flesh, and the heat of the fire really started to take hold. And then sort of get distracted in assisting others out of the carnage. It wasn't really until hours later that it really started to affect me at what I'd seen and experienced. Things started to unravel. The support network of a footy club, the camaraderie of your teammates, and the structure and the discipline and the willpower that the training and the game provides, didn't really put much focus on it until probably some issues in my life started to waver later on. Friends that I had associated with football and say teammates that maybe moved back interstate, had married with families, children, and I was sort of back being single at 37, 38 years of age, and I was looking for something, and going out and drinking and carrying on was certainly one of those things. It was a bit of escapism, and then some poor decisions made in terms of business, property, trusting friendships, lending money, all became too common. And before I knew it, I was getting further and further in, not so much in debt, but further and further behind from what I'd achieved out of football, and I suppose the nest egg that I'd sort of set myself up with, it started to diminish. And that certainly just led into, going out, drinking, sleeping in my car, borrowing money, doing crazy stuff, walking down the street at daylight, and looking for the next drink, and then trying to justify it because of all these events that had happened. And I was I was kidding myself, thinking it's okay to do this because, all this bad stuff's happened, it's okay. But, and that, that lasted, 3 years, I suppose, and it was constant, weekend after weekend, midweek, any occasion someone opened a drink, I'd drink. And then that just led to bad decisions and, just poor behaviour. More often than not, I'd be going out with my Thursday friends, and then I'd be going out with Friday friends, then Saturday friends, Sunday friends. And the one constant was me going every night. Challenging myself to stay up night after night after night. And certainly, drugs had certainly played a part in that, and I'm not proud of it. I was escaping, living a lie, and thinking what I was doing was, all fun and games, and until it started to impact, on my life financially, certainly family-wise, friendship-wise, health-wise. So, it certainly got to a stage where, it was week in, week out, spending thousands of dollars, and, whittling away, I suppose not a fortune, but a livelihood that I'd set up from football, pretty much down to next to nothing. Introduced to drugs by, social scene, and, it was, cocaine. It was just like an energy pill for me, and it was just a thing to just keep me going, straighten me up and keep me going. And then, and what happens over time, you keep doing it and doing it, you need more of it. And then, the scene and the people that you're around, it's pretty prevalent. It's there in your face everywhere you go. And to the point where, it was just, you couldn't go out without it. Because this overwhelming feeling of this is my life, I'm not happy with this life. And, I've had certainly suicidal thoughts, not to the point of really executing anything that dramatic, but I'd always have those thoughts. I'd have those thoughts of, woe is me, why is me, and, feeling sorry for myself. Then all of a sudden you start to blame others. And, it just became a vicious cycle. Up high on the weekend, low during the week. Any energy I had was trying to help mum and dad, and was doing nothing for myself. I had some help from my ex-captain, David Neitz, helped me, push me towards, say, the AFL Players Association in terms of, talking to someone, getting the ball rolling, and, really taking charge and getting back control of my life. And I suppose that process initially has been going for a year and a half, and it's only really been, within the last 7 months that I really, took some advice and took some action. Tipping point was a combination of just, I looked at myself in the mirror. I was, 25 kilos heavier. I certainly wasn't happy. I certainly wasn't fit. I certainly wasn't financial. The combination of all those, and I suppose a little bit of awareness of programs and other people's battles and struggles out there, that you're not alone. Let's start, getting life back in order. And the first thing was, it was seeing a psychologist, and it was getting on some antidepressants, and it was starting to be certainly honest with yourself and addressing the issues that were, ruining my life. Met with the AFLPA and worked out what I needed to do from there in terms of helping me pay health insurance, to get my health insurance back up to speed so that I could, look at going to a facility, a mental illness clinic, of which I did, which was in the Sunshine Coast, Corinda Mental Illness Centre. And I must admit, when that decision was made that I was going to do that and all that, I was actually genuinely, relieved, because, I could get myself out of this vicious circle that I was going in week after week after week. What had happened within the space of 1, 2, 3 weeks, I'd had some structure back, and I knew what I was doing. Certainly gave up everything that I was doing before, drinking and drugging and bad eating and everything I really was against from when I was playing sport. Exercise is, so important. diet, nutrition input. The focus that I got from it was that I could lose some weight. The injuries that I was making were my excuse for not exercising all these years. Weren't carrying as much weight. I wasn't so I could run, I could do gym, I could ride a bike. And then before you knew it, I'd started to get a smile on my face just from exercising. Simple things, driving the car, and I'd hear a song on the radio and I'd be smiling. A lovely sunny day, you know, was starting to bring the joy back. And that was certainly a combination of certainly having the hospital and the program that I undertook. And right as I sit here now, I couldn't be any more content and just actually thrilled with life, just purely from taking those steps which the AFLPA helped me do. If you can take the advice of others, hear my story, other stories, that post-sport depression or depression, anxiety, addiction, it's very, very real. It's certainly better to prevent it than try and cure it.